So this is my waveform sock pattern, and I've just completed the foot of my sock, and I have finished the decreases on my toe, and now I want to close the end of my toe, and I'm going to do that using a modified Kitchener stitch. I'm just going to zoom in a bit for you so that you can see more clearly and pop a background in because the stitches are quite pale. So here we are, and we've got an even number of stitches on the front and back needle, so the same number on the front and the back. We've got our needle tips facing to the right and our yarn tail sitting here at the back of the work because we've just finished our round. Now our yarn tail wants to be about 4 times the circumference that we're going to work to ensure that we don't run short of yarn. You want to have enough yarn to close your work, but you don't want to have so much that you're constantly pulling yards and yards of yarn through, because that's very tedious. So this is your front needle and the front side of the work. This is your back needle, and when you pull the needle up a bit here so you can expose the stitches, you see the purl bumps. Because we're not going to be turning our needles, we're going to be keeping them in the same place. And what we're going to do is we're going to work 2 stitches on the front needle, then 2 stitches on the back, and we're going to alternate. So on the front needle, insert your needle as if to knit, pull your stitch off, go back and insert your needle as if to purl. Then pull your yarn tail through, and you can snug it, but don't make it overly tight. It's much easier when closing a small gap like this to go back and just tighten your stitches up a bit than it is to try and make them looser. So we've worked the first 2 stitches on our front needle. Now we're going to work stitches on the back needle. And you're going to start with into purl, pull off, and then into knit, and then pull the yarn through. And that's it. We just keep repeating those processes. So knit, pull off, go through purlwise. Purl, pull off, go through knitwise. You may need to sort of jiggle your working yarn around a little bit so that it gets into the right place, because it gets a little bit stuck under the needles and a bit tangled up. So just be a little bit patient and allow that to come through. Just wondering what I've done now, so I can see that the yarn's coming out of the rear of my work, so it's back to the front needles, knitwise, and then pull it off, and then go through purlwise. Snug your yarn tail through nicely. Then go onto the back needle and go purlwise, pull it off, and then go through knitwise and keep the stitch on. I find this needle with the curved tip very useful for doing this process because it enables you to get nicely into your stitches. So knitwise, pull off, purlwise, pull the yarn through. Purlwise, pull off, knitwise, pull through. And what you might notice is that what we're doing matches the stitches that we're looking at. So we're looking at the knit face. So when we go in knitwise, we pull the stitch off, and then we do a purl. And then we work the back stitches. And as you look at those, they are purl bumps. So we purl first, pull off, and then go in knitwise. So you have a knit stitch, so you knit in and pull off, then purl. You have a purl stitch, so you purl in and pull off, and then go in knitwise. And you keep doing that until you get to your last 2 stitches. I will join you there. So you can get right to your last 2 stitches on your needles, and you've already worked these stitches. This one was purled through and this one is knitted through. And so those stitches are held in place. So actually you can simply take your needle out at that point. There's no need to do any more working of stitches. Now, what I then like to do is to slip my hand into the sock toe. And if you look at the end of the toe here, where I've just finished, I'm just going to take my needle. I'm just trying to do it so you can see where I'm going, and just go into a sort of stitch slightly above where I finished. And I've put my hand in there for 2 reasons. First of all, I can stick my needle in gently without getting them tangled up in the stitch inside, and I can also grip it with my hand that's in there. And then I'm going to pull that stitch just through like that, and then I'm going to show you how that looks. And it enables you to sort of, might need easing out a bit, to pull the stitch in nice and neatly and not have too square an end to your toe there. Now, if you look carefully at your Kitchener stitch, you can see that what I've done here is my stitches are a little bit loose. But what the Kitchener stitch allows you to do is to have this nice continuous end to your toe with no seam. Now, I'm not particularly happy with the fact that my stitches are too loose there, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how to correct for that. So I'm going to grab my tapestry needle and I'm going to keep my sort of work stretched out here a little bit. And what I'm going to do is just on the first Kitchener stitch, which is this first loose one here, just going to tug the yarn a little bit, and then I'm going to start moving that down the work. So onto here. It takes a little moment to find out where you're working when you first start doing this. And you can see that I'm using the eye end of my needle, and that's just because it's bigger. You could use tip of a knitting needle, or you see sometimes I'm using my fingers. And what I'm just doing is just this row of Kitchener stitch here, I'm just pulling it in that little bit tighter because it's quite saggy here at the beginning where I didn't tighten my yarn up enough. It's fine if it's a short distance, but generally if it's a long distance, let's just say you were joining something as long as like a cowl or something like that, I would actually check the tension on my Kitchener stitch as I went along, because obviously if you had to do this for a long way, it'd be quite tedious. So better to sort of check and correct your tension than to keep going with it too baggy. You see that actually as I've gone along, I've got better with the tension on here. So I can just pull that additional spare yarn all the way through to tidy up. I'm just trying to get hold of the yarn tail that's inside the work now to pull that down. And then you can see that I've got nice sort of even stitches in there now. They're not baggy at all. And what you can also do is just give the work a little stretch and a wriggle, just because the stitches do get a little bit sort of pulled out of order. And then you can see that you've got this nice continuous knitting for the end of your sock. So once I've done that, then I turn my work inside out so that I can work in my yarn tail here. So I'm going to thread onto my needle, and if you're worried about the security of your stitch, then you can just slip into the top of a purl stitch like so. So form a loop like that as you go into that purl stitch, and then just take your needle through that loop, and it makes just a slight knot. Not quite the right word, but just secures it down a bit. And then I simply take my needle down that row of pearls to get my yarn tail tucked away. And it's as simple as that. I'm going to cut my yarn tail and we're done. So we've now nicely closed the end of our toe with a nice tidy Kitchener stitch. So I hope you found that video useful. Please consider liking and subscribing, and happy knitting!